Some stories don't begin with a bang, they begin with silence. It was just after 8 p.m. when Will Byers pedaled down the dark backroads of Hawkins, Indiana. The sun had long dipped below the trees, leaving only moonlight to guide his way. His backpack bounced softly against his shoulder blades. His mind replayed the final moments of their Dungeons & Dragons campaign, his spellcaster cornered, out of spell slots, and facing certain doom. But Mike had called it game over, to be continued. He'd laughed, shrugged, said good night, but part of him still felt that familiar itch in his chest. The story didn't feel over yet. The tires hummed against the pavement, cutting through pockets of cool air and damp smells. Pine, wet leaves. Then something shifted. A metallic snap. His front tire locked. Will jerked forward and tumbled to the side, the bike skidding out from under him. Groaning, he pushed himself up, inspecting the chain. Broken clean through. Not normal. And worse, the woods around him had gone still. Not quiet like usual. Dead. No crickets. No breeze. The fog rolled in slowly, unnaturally thick. It wrapped around the trees and spilled onto the road like it had somewhere to be. Will squinted down the path ahead. His house was only a couple blocks away. He could walk it. But something deep in his gut told him he wasn't alone. He gripped the handlebars and began pushing his broken bike forward, every footstep crunching louder than it should. His breath puffed in front of him. The temperature had dropped. Fast. Then came the clicking. It was soft at first, like a distant rattle of insect legs, but it got sharper, closer. He stopped walking, his hand clenched tighter around the handlebars. Another sound, a low, wet growl, guttural, animal, but wrong. Will turned his head slowly, and there it was. The Demogorgon stood half concealed in the mist, just beyond the tree line. 7 feet tall, humanoid in the most horrifying way. Limbs too long, flesh too slick. Its head opened like a flower made of teeth, petals unfolding in slow motion, each glinting like broken glass. For a full second, Will couldn't move. His body went rigid, instinct locking him in place. The thing didn't charge. It just watched him, studied him. Then he ran. The bike dropped to the ground behind him. His feet slammed into the pavement, then the dirt, then leaves. Branches whipped at his face as he tore through the trees, lungs burning, every instinct in his body screaming to move. He didn't scream, didn't cry, he just ran. Behind him, the Demogorgon moved without sound, without rush. It didn't need to hurry, it knew the woods, knew he wouldn't get far, but Will was small, fast, smart. He dove under fallen trunks, darted through tight passages, used the forest like a maze. He could hear the creature crashing behind him now. Louder, angrier. He didn't stop. His legs carried him on pure adrenaline until the trees gave way to the familiar backyard of his house. Lights off, curtains drawn, too far from help, too late to scream. Will didn't even try the door. He cut left and sprinted for the shed. It wasn't much, just an old wooden thing filled with tools and camping gear. But it had a lock, 4 walls, a roof. It was something. He threw the door shut and dropped the latch, gasping for air. Inside, shadows danced with the flickering single bulb above. His fingers trembled as he scanned the room for anything that could protect him. That's when he saw it, mounted on the wall, the hunting rifle. He remembered Jonathan cleaning it once, walking him through the basics. "You never point this at anything unless you mean it," he'd said. That memory hit Will now like lightning. He pulled the rifle down and backed toward the center of the shed, knees wobbling. The light above buzzed louder. The cold returned, his breath turned visible. The air crackled. Outside, the clicking stopped. The latch began to lift. Will aimed the gun at the door, breath hitching, finger hovering on the trigger. The door creaked open, and he pulled it. Click. The rifle was empty. The click echoed louder than it should have. It didn't just sound like failure, it felt like it. Will's eyes went wide, a soundless panic rising in his chest as he yanked the bolt again, hoping, praying that maybe it was just a misfire. But there was nothing. The gun was empty, and the door was now half open. For a moment, the space between them stretched in eerie stillness, then the air dropped to freezing. The light above him flickered hard, then died. The shed sank into darkness, the corners overtaken by shadow. The only illumination came from the space just beyond the door, grey mist curling in like fingers, crawling over the floor. Will backed up until his spine hit the far wall. His breath was shallow, clouds forming in front of his face as he tried to hold it in. The sound outside had stopped entirely. No wind, no birds, no footsteps, just silence, and that pulsing, invisible pressure that made his ears ring. Then it changed. The walls began to shift. He didn't see it all at once, but it was happening. The wood grew black and damp, flaking away into rot. The smell hit next, like mildew and something sourer, wet earth mixed with decay. He looked around and saw the outlines of the shed transforming, layer by layer, like paint peeling in reverse. Cobwebs formed in seconds. The tools rusted before his eyes. The shed was becoming something else. A low hum filled the air, not from any machine, but from the air itself, like static vibrating in his bones. Will turned and looked back at the open door. Beyond it, the world no longer looked like Hawkins. It was darker, denser. The trees outside had twisted, their branches bent the wrong way. Ash floated through the air like snow. It was the same world, just wrong. He took a single step forward, and the floor creaked like a scream. He wanted to call for his mum, for Jonathan, for anyone, but the words wouldn't come. The moment he crossed the shed's threshold, the cold sank into his skin like ice water, and he knew something had changed. Not just the space, but him. From somewhere in the distance, the growl returned. Will turned and grabbed the nearest thing he could find, a wooden baseball bat with a cracked handle. Not much, but it felt heavier than nothing. He didn't wait to see what was coming through the mist. He just ran. The trees loomed closer now, taller, stranger. Every direction looked the same. No stars above, no light behind, just that endless, dim, grey fog. The sound of his footfalls was swallowed whole by the air. Then the clicking came again, closer this time. He spun, bat raised, eyes scanning the dense mist. The Demogorgon was out there, watching, hunting. Every instinct screamed at him to keep moving, but the space felt infinite, like he'd stepped into a maze with no exit. A shape darted past him, tall, fast. He ducked, swinging blindly, the bat cutting through air. He couldn't win like this. He didn't need to. He needed to survive. So he ran. He didn't think, didn't plan, just let his instincts take over. His mind raced back to D&D. What would he do if this was a campaign? When the monster was too strong? You don't fight. You hide. You wait. You find your moment. His legs carried him deeper into the fog, and then, like a beacon, he saw it. Castle Byers, or what was left of it. The fort looked ancient now, decayed and collapsing under its own weight. The tarp hung loose and shredded. Mould streaked the wooden planks. But it was still his, still standing. Will pushed inside and collapsed into the corner, curling up behind a stack of old blankets and wooden crates. His body shook, not from the cold, but from the terror pressing in from all sides. He covered his mouth with both hands to silence his breathing and waited. Outside, the fog shifted. Footsteps approached. The sound was wet, deliberate, just beyond the tarp. The air grew colder, but Will didn't move. The presence paused, sniffed, then slowly, mercifully, faded back into the mist. He stayed there for hours, maybe longer, long after the clicking stopped, long after the fog thinned, long after the silence returned. He stayed, alone, but alive. Time didn't exist in the Upside Down. Not in the way Will had known it. There was no day or night, no sunrises to mark the hours. Just the constant, pulsing dimness of grey fog, and a sky that stretched forever like it had forgotten how to be blue. He had no idea how long he'd been inside Castle Byers, curled in on himself, trying to breathe through the weight of the silence. The once bright walls of his childhood fort were blackened and rotting. Memories lived in the wood, sleepovers, comic books, nights pretending to be heroes. Now those same walls dripped with decay, vines threading through the corners like veins. Even here, in his own creation, he wasn't safe. but it was the only place he had left. He hadn't seen the Demogorgon in hours, but he knew better than to believe it was gone. It didn't need to chase him anymore. It just needed to wait. The Upside Down wasn't a battleground. It was a trap, a place designed to wear him down until he gave up. But Will wasn't giving up. Every time his panic threatened to crush him, he thought of his mum. Of her smile when she handed him a peanut butter sandwich after school. Of her soft humming when she thought no one was listening. He thought of Jonathan, and the way he always double-checked the locks at night because he knew Will slept easier that way. He thought of Mike and Lucas and Dustin yelling across the table during D&D like their lives actually depended on it. And most of all, he thought of the promise he made himself when the Demogorgon first appeared. He wasn't going to let it win. He scavenged the inside of Castle Byers for anything useful. A busted flashlight, a small canteen, an old walkie-talkie, though it buzzed with nothing but static. He took stock like a ranger, preparing for a long campaign because that's what this was now, a survival game, and he had to play smart. Each time he ventured outside the fort, he didn't move fast, he moved quiet. He watched, he listened, he mapped his surroundings as best he could, twisted versions of real places, the back of Melvold's, the remains of his school, the shell of the junkyard, all shadowed and silent, coated in death. At one point, he stumbled across the library. The windows were broken. Books lay scattered and soaked. In the real world, it had been a place of stories. Here, it was just another corpse. Still, he remembered something Dustin had said once, during a campaign. When you can't fight the monster, you learn its patterns. Monsters have rules. They always do. So Will watched, and over time, he began to understand something that terrified him even more than the Demogorgon's presence. It wasn't hunting him for food, it was hunting him for sport, for silence. It wanted him afraid, alone, paralysed, and that gave him power. Because if fear was its game, then not giving in meant fighting back. The next time it came close, he didn't scream. He didn't run. He didn't move at all. He stayed still inside Castle Byers, heart pounding, hands pressed to his mouth, eyes locked on the jagged outline outside the door. The Demogorgon sniffed the air, lingered, but didn't come in. It left. And Will knew, in that moment, that he could last. He didn't know how long he'd be here, he didn't know if anyone would find him, but he knew one thing: he wasn't just a scared kid hiding in a shed anymore, he was a survivor. Quiet, small, smart. He'd been playing games with monsters his whole life. Now he was living one. And he wasn't done yet. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.